Wow. Good evening, Winthrop votes. Scott, my producer, the greatest producer on Facebook. Wow, your graphics game is on the money there. A new graphic for us to look at while we're
You
waiting for
like
the
that, huh?
countdown. Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a
Look at
lot.
me.
Look at you coming up big. So
Yeah.
big night tonight. We have a very special guest. It's also the night before the election, so all of the candidates were at the bridge, or at least a lot of the candidates were at the bridge coming into Winthrop, holding signs, waving to the traffic.
Love it.
Yeah, it's so tomorrow's the big day, right? Tomorrow's the big day, and all of this work these candidates are we're working towards will soon be paid off.
Yep.
But we have waiting in the wings, and I'd love to say bring him on, Terry Delehanty, the chief of police, and the current reappointed interim acting town manager.
There he is.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Terry. How are you?
Okay, I can't complain, as they say. No one's going to listen anyway.
Yeah, they don't. No, they don't.
Some pretend to. Some
Yeah.
pretend. So, just before we get too far down the road, for folks who are listening or will listen, in full disclosure, well, first of all, this is not a high pressure political interview, so no big deal. But Terry Delehanty and I and the Delehanty family, and we go way back. I was more friendly with Brian. Brian graduated with me, but I mean, there's ties up and down with Sean, Michael, you, and so I want to say, but I am going to say this stuff anyway. Terry has been a stalwart through the pandemic. He's tolerated what I found to be some pretty distasteful stuff in the past, and I just want to say we have, and despite some differences we had over a I'll call it a flag issue. I still consider him my friend, and I think he's doing a great job, and I think he deserves some thanks for what he's gone through over the past year and a half.
Yes, thank you, Todd. And just in full disclosure for myself, that I'm not running for any office and never probably will. So that's a good thing, right?
Yep.
Also, just because I'm showing up for your show and doing the interview doesn't mean we think alike or we have the same philosophies. My answers will speak for themselves. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, happy to have you. Standard format, and Scott, I don't know, before we get going into this, anything you wanted to add?
No. I just want to thank him for coming on the show. I know you're a busy man. Usually police chiefs are. It's not a day goes by that you're not on call 24/7, right? So I want to thank you for taking a little time to come out and talk to us. Yeah, you ready to do a good show, guys?
I am ready. Yeah.
All right. So let me start off.
Sure thing.
Terry, what do you think the state of the town is right now, considering there's interim everything? Like, is that having an effect, or is it? What's your take on it?
So it's trying times. I think it's trying times everywhere, not just in Winthrop. Trying to hire people, trying to retain people. A lot of people in the finance world have left because of the opera's money, and they just didn't want to deal with it. They were at the end of their career. So you have some vacuums in certain areas, not just here in Winthrop, but across the Commonwealth. I got a great assistant CFO. I have an interim CFO that has over 40 years of experience to keep the finances rolling. We have the assistant treasurer has stepped up and is helping us out greatly there. But we need to move, and we need to start moving to fill some of these positions. And the number one position that we have to fill is the town manager's position. And Todd, I see you. You would like to add
He
something?
raised his hand.
I was actually agreeing. I was like, he's going to say town manager.
Okay.
So can you update us on where we are with that right now?
Sure. Today was the deadline for companies to submit RFPs, requests for quotes, actually RFQs, not an RFP because the money is below a certain level, so we don't need a full RFP. So RFQs, request for quotes, we're due today. One company submitted, I know that, and just waiting to get an update from the actual procurement officer. on if anyone else submitted before the deadline at 4:30 this afternoon. So now that we have at least one company that's interested, that will go to the council president. The council president will then sign the contract with that company. And then it's about every 2 weeks, there's some major events. So within 2 weeks, they'll meet with the council president. They'll then set up a schedule that goes out to February 28th. And I just looked at their proposal, February 28th to onboard a town manager by. So you're going to probably advertise around December and give a good 14 to 21 days for people to apply, and then the screening process will start right after Christmas and work our way right into a person to be selected before hopefully the end of February.
Do you have a preference or opinion on worldwide, town? I mean, local person. What's your view on what we should be, or are there specific skill sets you think we should be looking for?
Well, I certainly think skill set is important. You want someone. I would like to think you'd like somebody that's been through the town manager's job before, that has some stability in a town manager's position before. I don't think you can just take anybody and throw them in here. But we have to pay. You get what you pay for. I'm a strong believer in that. I think our money was too low when we went out last time. I've made recommendations with the CFO after actually looking at several communities and what they were paying and what we should actually advertise and pay. If we want serious candidates. If we don't want serious candidates, then they don't have to really pay that much, right? If you want someone that's going to cut their teeth in Winthrop, then you can keep it low. I prefer a serious candidate, and I prefer someone with experience, someone who has dealt with personnel issues, someone who knows the labor laws in Massachusetts. If this job at the town manager's level is very diverse and widespread, you have to have a vast knowledge, and you're in charge of the budget. I'm proud to say that we have forecasted out the 23 budget already. And, as long as we don't go crazy and hire, a bunch of people, we can balance the budget for 23 without an override. So I'm, proud of that work that we've done in a short period of time here, and with the assistance of the CFO and the assistant CFO, they've been phenomenal to work with. And again, we've been down to the school department talking to them about how much we can give them. So it's been an inclusive process, and the council has been fully briefed on where we are. So it's important to have a vision, to let people know if they go outside that vision, then we're really gonna have to change the numbers and the budgets and the budget lines. But if you keep it within the vision, we can balance 23, and I think we balance for the next 4 years out after 23, and then we have to make some tough decisions based in like 27, 28.
Do you think the town manager should make more than the school superintendent?
I certainly think the town manager is as important as the superintendent. The superintendent's salary is actually negotiated by the school committee and not by the town. So I don't know what data points they look at, but I think whatever we pay anybody, we should look at data points. We should look like comparable communities and what are they paying? What's the likelihood of attracting candidates, right? Do we want to keep the candidate that we currently have, or the person in that position that we currently have? Are they doing a good job, and are we trying to get longevity? My goal is to have a longevity top level positions in the town government, because you have stability then. And if you have stability, everyone knows where they are, everyone knows where they stand, and everyone has build confidence over time, instead of having someone just here for 3 years or 4 years and then leaving for the next job. So I think stability, and I think, yes, sometimes we have to pay for that. I know there's, I think, 31 new superintendents hired this year, and there was, I think, 3 vacancies still that haven't been hired. I know there's another vacuum in the superintendent world that's probably going to come up in the next 6, 7, 8 months. Police chiefs is the highest level of our retirements this year. On police chiefs across the nation and in Massachusetts.
We are operating at an unfortunate situation. We're negotiating from a position of weakness, and Winthrop especially, because we're so management light. right? So we really couldn't afford to allow the current superintendent to go. We just couldn't do it. We could not have the kids after the last year and a half they had be rudderless.
No, and I think that's an important point to make, Todd, is continuity of government, and what does that look like for Winthrop, right? You have the police chief filling in as the town manager. Not an ideal situation, not something that should be in that continuity plan. I'm fortunate enough that my family tolerates me and allows me to do some of the crazy things I do. And, without their support and assistance, I wouldn't be able to do this job, check in with the police department every day. The police department finally got it right after many years. We have a chief and a deputy chief. You have to anticipate family medical leaves. You have to anticipate leaves based on injury, and you have to have that next level step up. I don't think that next level can be unionized employees. That next level has to be in the continuity plan, has to be non-union, contracted employees that step up. And I think that's one of the major things that's missing here in town, the town hall, and certainly the town manager's office. And I think we need to start looking at that as the assistant superintendent. Who do we have, and do we have an assistant superintendent that can take over for Lisa? She has qualified people that certainly can take over and be ready, but they don't have that title. I think we need to start looking at continuity of government, building out those layers. So when the town manager becomes ill or unfortunate circumstances leaves, that assistant just steps right up, and there's no hiccups. There's nothing, going on. And we just had the deputy chief for the last 4 years. So what a perfect timing. We've been through a lot this year. His investigative skills are second to none. He brought that from the city of Revere, where he was the detective lieutenant. So it worked out well for me being over here and going over there on occasion. So that incident on June 26th that was handled very well by him. Obviously, I was there throughout the whole incident myself. And we still continue to work on that incident with the state police. And certainly we bring in an outside contractor to do an after-action review of that incident. So there's a lot of work to do when a major incident like that happens. The next day is not the end for us. It's just the beginning.
Yeah. You're just starting. So go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Hannah Belcher wants to know, in your experience, what was one of the challenges of the town manager role that you weren't expecting, aside from COVID? What skills can we look for in candidates to ensure those types of challenges can be handled well?
I think I was here before in 2017, so I got a full dose of what I was walking into this year in 2021. So there was nothing that would kind of surprise me walking in. I knew what I needed, but you have to make tough decisions. You have to have a person willing to make tough decisions. You can't, sometimes don't have time to think about them. But again, where I think the strongest points I think a person has to bring to this job is how well versed they are in the Massachusetts labor laws. We've had police chiefs over the years past that came from New Hampshire, wonderful people and smart people, but couldn't get civil service and couldn't get the Massachusetts labor laws down. And it becomes a big deficit and a big vacuum. And of course, we have lawyers to help you on lawsuits with labor relations and employment law, but on the basic day-to-day thing, does he have an understanding, or she have an understanding of Family Medical Leave Act? How well versed are they in that? How well versed are they in training department heads and all of those things? Because your department heads need to know it better than the manager, because that's who you're relying on every day. What's their management style in dealing with their department heads? Are they having meetings every week or every other week? What types of trainings would they like to see their department heads participate in? I train, a lot. I go to a lot of trainings. And I think you'll learn something every training you go to, even if you heard it before. You can pick up one more thing.
Yeah, it's reinforced. Sure.
One more thing is so imperative. And then again, what's his philosophy or her philosophy on how does that trickle down into the departments to supervisors?
I think that's a big part of it.
Yep.
It starts in the canine world. It runs down leash.
Ah,
Bad
cute.
vibes run down leash. Dog not working.
That's so true. Yeah, that's
So
a great analogy.
yeah. What do you got, Todd?
Yeah. So Terry, well, I don't know if I'm ready to shift away from this topic, but I do see a question, one more question about the town manager. You know, you talked about salary, so it looks like this listener and viewer would like to know what you think it would be appropriate. Range would be good anyway, if you
Yeah.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
So, I've talked to many town managers out there and what they're making, and certainly I have friends that are town managers now because of the position I've been in twice, and no one's coming or no one's going to be attracted, unless you're paying 2 to 220, and that's a range.
Yeah.
I think that's what you have to pay to attract people in this environment. And with COVID and people not fully coming back to work, and that's the bind we're in. And if we're not considering that, I think we have budgeted 200 in the 23 budget to make sure that if they wanted to pay that much, they were able to do it without worrying about going outside the budget scales.
And so
you're doing this as like a collateral duty? Are you
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting paid for this, or
No, I get my police chief salary.
I think people need to really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes,
And you took this on for free.
Yeah.
Well, we do what we have to do in Winthrop. I think that's what I think people miss a lot, is that we all just pitch in and do what we have to do to make the town run. And certainly, not just me, Larissa here in the town manager's office, John Goodwin, Scott Wiley and his crew at the fire department, the entire police department. When things hit the fan, everyone steps up.
Yeah,
and everyone has stepped up. But you got
Circle
to
the
be
wagons.
not to burn. You got to be able to not burn them down.
Yeah.
People willing to step up. You can't take advantage, and that's the balancing act. And that's why we need to move some of these departments and do the hirings quicker.
And that brings me back to where I wanted to take this conversation, Terry. First and foremost, throughout the pandemic, without question, our police and first responders showed up every day. They had to go into some of the most unsafe environments. I mean, we all know. If we don't know, go look it up. During the pandemic, the transmissions were highest in home. What that means is everywhere else was safer. That these police officers every single day had to go in. And so first and foremost, I want to, and I'm sure Scott would echo these sentiments, thank the Winthrop Police Department, the fire department, all our first responders, health officials. And I want to focus our thanks locally right now, because they deserve the brunt, if you will, of our appreciation. They've had to tolerate some listen, I know people have had to tolerate me through this thing. Your kids get messed up in these things, and people I'm not perfect, and I own it, and I don't care. I'm trying to be better, but I'm not perfect, and I may never get there. Doesn't matter. Kids needed to be protected. People needed to be protected, and our police department did it without question. And I just wanted to call you guys out for that, for starters. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And early on in COVID, we made sure that we put precautions in place to try to protect them. Cleaning the cruisers every shift. Every time a prisoner got out of a cruiser, it was cleaned. The cells were cleaned every time the prisoner left. The booking area was cleaned. And it wasn't just cleaned. We brought a company in to clean it. Right. Whether it was 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, no officer would get back in that cruiser until it was cleaned. We're still doing that. We're using static sprayers now, obviously, to try to make sure that the grant funding is moving away. We're trying to do it more efficiently and effectively. But those static sprayers were purchased through some of the grant money. So it was certainly trying times. There was no rule book in that, and me, Meredith, and the fire department, Chief Wiley and Chief Flanagan would sit down in the EOC every single day and make sure people who were quarantined had food, and just the voluminous amount of things that had to be done on a day-to-day basis. But and I never thought I would say this. I'm grateful to have that moment and that time. I think it was over here 6 months. In the EOC, and I'm grateful for that, because it built relationships that was so valuable on June 26th. that made that whole situation better. 7 o'clock in the morning, I woke up after sleeping for an hour and a half. And I first immediately person to call was Meredith Hurley and say, okay, we took care of the firefighters, we took care of the police officers. What are we doing for the public, especially those people that live on Shirley Street that was in the impact area? And she got a whole team together by Monday morning to start doing door knocks and start reaching out with services. I'm not sure if I would have thought of that if it wasn't for COVID and working with Meredith and the fire department so closely leading up to that event. So one positive thing, right? Came out of COVID. Not many other positive things came out of COVID, but it also forced us to take a look at the health department and say, okay, we can't have one person in our health department any longer. And through grant money, we've built that out. We significantly built that out through grant money to bring in more social workers to work with Meredith, to bring a team in for contact tracing. Now, I'm sure you saw the states dumping that back on local boards of health in Massachusetts, which were more strained, but I'm glad we had an opportunity to build her up and build her department out so she can handle the contact tracing.
So, Terry, with all this, so we relied on you folks now, we relied on the police during the pandemic, without a vaccine. We now have a vaccine available. And I don't want to go crazy down this subject road. I want to know just specifically here how it's impacting Winthrop, because now we're being forced, right? So there's a mandate, and first responders, what is the current status, I guess, in Winthrop in terms of how we have to comply? How compliant are we? Are we going to lose any officers?
So the answer is we always have the potential of losing officers because of going to another department, say lost 4 to the state police. We're not going to lose them because of a mandate, at least while I'm in charge of the town. I do believe in the vaccine. I've had my booster shot. I have my 2 other shots prior to that. I believe it's more like the flu shot, right? I believe that you should get it. I don't want to bring anything back to my mother, who's not as young as I am you. So, I don't want to bring it back to my kids and my wife. So I do it for personal reasons. I strongly believe in it. It has brought the numbers down. I don't think at this point I'm going to order people and say you have to have it. I think there's other alternatives, and I think people need to think about those other alternatives. Whether it's testing and requirements like that. I haven't even required the testing if you don't have to have the vaccine. I think we're doing fine. If we have an outbreak or we have an increase in people getting COVID in the police department, fire department, or town government, I'll rethink it. But again, we put the barriers in place. They can wear masks at work if they like. We might come down to it if we have a spread in the police department. Mask while you're in the building. If you're in the cruiser by yourself, take your mask off. So you can do that if you can't stay away 6 feet away. You're going to see an increase in this. I mean, let's not fool ourselves between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We have seen it in prior years. It's because it's getting cold up here. Everyone's going indoors. You know what's causing it.
Yeah.
So we've learned a lot, for Easter and Thanksgiving already. We did one full cycle, and now we know the trends. We know when we're going to go up. We know when we're going to go down. But I think we've done a phenomenal job. I think they've done a phenomenal job in the schools. Our kids are still in school. The most important thing to get people back to work is to make sure we have the kids in school. So they can return to their job and have a stable, more stable, predictable life.
I'm sure your officers do appreciate the fact that there's no mandate on them, because I know I still have friends in the federal system that are furious that they've been mandated to get the shot, and it's become the new flashpoint, And I know more than a few other police officers that are dealing with the mandates. I think it's much respect to you from a former officer, police officer, that you give your guys that respect. And a lot of people would look at it differently, but they're not running the police department. It's kind of a unique job
It is, and
It is.
what if I lose a third of my offices?
Yeah.
Where are we then? And
You're New
Yeah.
York City. You're Manhattan. You're
you lose a third of the police officers. It's a big impact for me.
Yeah.
How do I manage and put police officers out there on shifts? But I think we have a very high compliant rate. I think we're probably in the 80-85% compliant rate. So I really think we can manage it by other people getting the vaccine. And again, I could change my mind based on the state or federal government mandates that they start pulling money. If they start stopping grants, we might have to go back and revisit it. But right now, I'm comfortable where we are.
All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. What do you think of all the condo development either going on or being proposed in Winthrop? Also, seeing that your offices are the boots on the ground as far as the traffic problems, do you have to change your deployment methods and or staffing models due to the daily traffic? So condos and traffic.
Let's go condos first.
Yeah.
And you may have to repeat your traffic question, but we'll get there. So condos, I'm a strong believer in incremental development. I believe that we can incrementally grow. We don't want to become Revere with the big buildings on Ocean Ave and Revere Beach. That doesn't fit in Winthrop. So I think obviously I'm sitting here as the town manager, want new growth, right? There's only way I can sustain pay raises in the future. The only way I can keep the lights running with increased electricity costs and gas costs. So you want this new growth. But at what point does it overburden the town or the neighborhoods? I think Winthrop has to tell us what they want. I think we have a good system. We have the appeals board and the planning board that weigh in on these conversions. The Somerset Ave project, Procopio, that's currently doing it. They fought 6 years and we're finally doing that project. Since he started his construction, I haven't received one complaint. The owner of the companies down there making sure of it. I think they're up to their third story now. And it fits in that particular neighborhood when you look at the height of other houses that are already existing there. So I think it's, it comes down to what neighborhood we're talking about, how big is the development, and what fits in the neighborhood and what will the people tolerate. A lot of it we should take into consideration of what the neighborhood would tolerate.
Terry, so we actually, I think I tend to agree with you on, and maybe we might want to fine tune what we mean by incremental growth, but you're right. I don't want us to become Revere or Cambridge. I think Scott has a fairly same sentiment as we do there. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're not going to develop our way out, right? We can't build enough to catch up with the consumption of money. Because you're right. I mean, and I don't want to turn this into a discussion about who deserves raises or who doesn't, but future raises, no matter deserved, where they are, how much they are, or otherwise, they have to be funded. And
yes,
we have proven over and over again with all of the new development we've had that there is never enough money. And I think we do need to, as a town, to your point, I think we need to actually address funding from our own pocketbooks perspective. And I'm just throwing this out there as kind of something to think about. The only way it's done correctly is to truly educate the people on how the budget works, where all the money actually goes when the new money comes in, right? Like I was talking to someone at the standout today, at a standout for one of the candidates today, and she was explaining to me that she would vote for a menu, a directed menu, right? Like this goes to this, that goes to that, but she also agreed that after the first year, that all bets are off on where the money goes because some other budget line could fail, and so we have to move money over here. We might have to cut a program, and that directed funding goes away. So my point is, I think honest conversation with the community about where all 90-something plus % of our new money goes, that needs to be a real conversation so that if you want to ask people for more money, they actually know what they're paying for.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you on that, Todd. I think that's the process we're starting to go through at the council and the Citizens Finance Committee level. We've had small groups in my office with the CFO and the assistant CFO going through our forecast and our projections and telling them exactly where that money's going. So they understand, the people who are making our decisions understand. exactly what my budget represents. And think once we get 23 underway, the public should understand that, right? It's the natural progression. So I think I agree with you. We're going to have to at some point dip our hands into our pockets. But how much do we ask for? And can we have incremental development offset the Prop 2.5 overrides or debt exclusions, whatever the town chooses to do, depending on what they're doing, right? General fund stuff will be an override. If you're going to build, then you're going to have a debt exclusion. That's the kind of difference. I just want everyone to understand those two differences. So I think our incremental development helps, so they don't have to dig in as deep as they may have to.
But incremental development, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Terry. Yeah. Incremental development and Winthrop's infrastructure, isn't that kind of like death by 1,000 cuts? Everything has a tipping point. I mean, at what point does incremental development tip over? Because the traffic in and out of Winthrop is already insane in the morning, from what I understand. Now on both sides, Revere and East Boston. At what point do you just say Winthrop's infrastructure can't handle this? The streets can't handle it. The sewage can't handle. The sewer systems can't handle it. Well, it just becomes
every development goes through a site plan review. I sit in the site plan review with the building commissioner, the fire chief, the DPW director, and that's exactly what we get to. Yeah. We get to, can our water system handle that development? Yeah. Can our source system handle that development? Or if they can't, then it's up to the developer to increase that sewer line and that water line. And what's it do for traffic in that area? So we do carefully review these things, and the planning board has a role in that. After we're done, they get a chance to review it. So they can sometimes add to our recommendations. I've never seen them take away from our recommendations. Right. So I think, again, it comes down to that. I hate to keep saying incremental development, and that might be changing a 1-family to a 2-family. That might be the incremental development I'm talking about. That might be changing an existing 3-family into an existing 3 condos. That changes what I can collect in tax revenue for that one building.
That's what I'm talking about too, Terry. That's my definition of I call that more responsible development, right? Trying to maintain as much of the footprint as you can, but realizing that you're going to have to grow in some areas. And I include parking. Parking needs to be included because people need cars.
Sure. Condos pay less taxes than houses, right? Than homes.
Because right now, yes, they definitely are, and depends on what type of condo. So the condos at Atlantis Marina are very expensive, and they're going to be paying about the same as a single-family home. Depending, unless you have a single-family home that's a huge. Right. Maybe you're living over by Todd or something. Just joking. So it depends on what type of condo it is and how luxurious it is. An area that needs incremental development is Shirley Street from Delby's Inn. That needs incremental development. It's our waterfront. It's our premier real estate, and we don't have good properties there. And that's an area that we're trying to work on now. But I think that area would absolutely can handle incremental development and should be redone if we can just get the landowners to come along with us. And I think 2 or 3 houses are selling that are pretty much a large area of that impact area that I'm talking about.
I do not see how they would be able to deal with any type of parking. I watched the town meeting, or the planning board, I think it was, for that 5-story monstrosity that was proposed up on Shore Drive. And they wanted 12 condos, 5 parking spots. And I just don't see how that will happen. But this is down the line. Down the line.
And that, I think, is still before the Board of Appeals there.
They're coming back in this month. I'm sorry to interrupt again. This month, I think November 18th, they're coming back with a new proposal. And I know what they're going to do. And I still hope it doesn't go through because it's all about the parking. That seems to be the bottom line. The people on those surrounding streets already struggle to park.
Yeah, when they come over. I agree with you.
Yeah.
100% on parking. It's one of my biggest problems.
Yeah.
And when we have a
So
snowstorm,
that's
and
the
so,
infrastructure. It can't handle
well, that's
what's
one of the issues we discuss at our site plan review is how many parking spots you have, where you're pushing snow. We don't want you pushing on the street, so you have to store it someplace, right? We try to work through all those issues
right.
with the developers, and sometimes they come back 3-4 times. But on Shirley Street, if you lift them up, you have parking underneath. You got to get creative in some areas too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. I agree with that. Yeah. So Terry, what are your thoughts on? And I'm stealing one of Scott's questions because I was going to ask this question. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on
Sure, you were.
neighborhood policing? In all seriousness, because I was talking about this with some friends the other night, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So
Sure. So you say neighborhood policing. What does that mean to you?
So in my mind, neighborhood policing is like beat cops.
Yeah.
Get just walking through the neighborhood and becoming friends with us.
Yeah.
so
Go ahead.
that was one thing I was going to say. When I was growing up with your brother Sean, Winthrop had places to hang around: the center, the Highlands, the Point, down the on the beach. That's how we got to know the police. Whether it was a good interaction or a bad interaction, we got to know them. We know who they were. They knew who we were. And there was there was always a respect. Well, at least we respected back then. Today, I don't know how these kids do it, but that's how we got to know the police. They would stop. Whether we were standing in a doorway up the Highlands, they would just stop, whether they said so. So we got to know them that way. I don't see that happening in Winthrop today. I don't think kids congregate down the center anymore. I don't think they congregate in any specific locations like we used to. So how do your officers get out there and kind of get to know these kids and get to know the families?
Yeah. So, we have a very active community policing program in Winthrop, and we've embedded it in our system when the officers hired. So we have open gym night on Friday nights that we have police officers assigned there. Street officers, I've gotten pictures from the Parks and Recs director saying, "Hey, is this one of your officers in full uniform just picked up a hockey stick and started playing street hockey at Ingleside Park? This is wonderful." Officer Dutra did that last summer. It was just, that's who we are. So it's not just youth that we try to connect with. It's the senior center. We have the senior barbecue. Unfortunately, for the last 2 years, we've pushed that to a drive-through to protect the seniors, but we're still doing it. We're not just saying, "Oh, it's COVID, we're not going to do this." We cook the food right behind the high school. They drive through. We hand them a bag with the burgers, hot dogs, chips, and waters, and off they go. Parks and Recs, we partner with them during the summer to do about 2 barbecues with them. And then again, when we open parks, I usually am at the park openings cooking, hamburgers, hot dogs, and sausages. So we hire police officers to go down there during that time. And then some police officers show up even if they're off duty. So we have a very good community policing program. School resource officers add to that. And a lot of times, everyone knows the school resource officer because they're in the schools a lot. They know all the kids. So we rely on them for the introduction or, "Hey, this is Chief Delehanty." So before COVID, we tried to do a lunch with the chief through the high school. And whoever won that on a monthly basis, I'd have lunch with some kids. We did donuts with the chief one morning at the high school. Kids came in early. So we try to get out there with the high school students, middle school students, and with just the general population. So I think everyone's trying to do what you call it neighborhood policing. I look at neighborhood policing as a failure of the 1970s. Community policing, I think, is where it's at. Neighborhood policing in Boston was very different than the community policing philosophy we have of today. And all of this is covered in the 21st century policing model that was President Obama's flagship police reform issue. And we've already done this stuff long before that document came out. Yeah. So proud of them with the police department. Chief Goldstein did a lot of community interaction, and Chief Shamshak, when I first came on the job, was very visible in teaching people community policing. So it's something that I carried forward and I am committed to, and with our seniors as well as our youth. And I think we have great officers. We have the Explorer program, the Youth Academy.
The
We're
Youth
running
Academy,
a Police
yeah.
Academy right now. We have, I think, 18 people in the Citizens Police Academy. All of those are contacts, positive contacts to the police department.
Right.
A lot of times we have a lot of negative contacts, and we don't want that. We want everyone to see us in a positive light as well.
Yeah, my son did that youth program, Scott. He raved about it. If he doesn't become a police officer, I'll be shocked.
There you go.
Good for him.
Yeah, I'll be shocked.
Terry, according to the media, all right, I'll conveniently pause after I say that.
Disclaimer.
The media and FBI statistics, there seems to be a national uptick in crime nationwide. Has Winthrop felt any of that since January 2020?
So I think, it depends on certainly what category of crimes you're looking at. We've had some increases. We've had some decreases. One of the frauds and forgery type of crimes that we often had to deal with through COVID was people trying to steal other people's benefits, unemployment benefits. And we had to do all those reports. So, you went from 18 to 128, 130. If there were public employees that someone else was trying to collect their unemployment, we have them on the payroll. We had to do all those reports. So you see some imbalance. Obviously our manslaughters and murders have increased. Just on that one day, we had 3 people die in Winthrop. That's going to throw the numbers out of whack, that one incident. But overall, our burglaries are down. Our kidnappings and abductions are zero across the board, which is, those are positive things. Rapes that we have no control over, they're slightly up. Statutory rapes that we have no control over are slightly up. But overall, our B&Es, our motor vehicle B&Es, you're going to have people who are just opening doors. Before, when I was younger, they broke the windows and they stole your stuff. Now they just go to unlock cars.
That's
so
right.
Anyone listening, lock your car. Help us out, right?
Yeah.
So, our drug crimes are up, but that's because you have enforcement and you have detectives out there really working the drug crimes. Illegal firearms possessions are up. Not a shocker when your drug crimes are up, right?
Right.
It kind of coincides with that, but that's because of proactive policing that those stats are up. So, a lot of, crime statistics is sometimes how you report them, and sometimes, if you're proactive or not proactive. So we try to balance that out.
All right. Todd?
No, Terry, you've answered all my questions.
Well, I have more.
So I'll let Scott, maybe you'll spawn more of mine, but you got all my questions, so go for it.
I have your questions?
No, he's answered all my questions.
I'm only kidding.
Okay, you win.
Terry, because of the negative narrative through certain media outlets and politicians on police over the last year, has Winthrop seen any decline or have any recruiting or retirements due to this negative narrative thrown at police?
So I think, it's hard to manage the negativity on policing. I think all the police officers are maybe tired of hearing that we're the problem and not the solution. And, they put their lives on the line every single day and night, and nothing proved that more than June 26th when they stopped a hateful person attacking specific groups of people in Winthrop. There was no hesitation. Everyone responded. I came in from North Revere, and I was there before they transported the suspect to a hospital. So everyone responded in quickly, and that's what counts. You put the negativity aside and you do your job. But yeah, it affects us. It certainly affects us when you're talking about defunding. And I ask people, what do you mean by that? And they can't. No one can seem to define.
They don't have an answer.
Which is troublesome because we've been working with Mary Philly since 2013. Then she left and came back with social workers responding to the opiate crisis. We didn't care who you were, where you lived. We responded with social workers. I have a lieutenant assigned with Meredith Hurley on a day-to-day basis that runs the stats for opiates and mental health and domestic violence and making sure those people are reached out to. So we really didn't get the sentiment that social workers need to be doing this job. And over in Cambridge, it was a couple of years ago now, there was a psychologist driving by the street, and the police officers were interacting with the gentleman that was stripped down naked, and they ended up tasing him. And they asked that psychologist, why didn't he stop? He said, we're not prepared to deal with that. We deal with these people in the emergency room in a controlled setting.
Yeah.
We don't deal with them when they're violent,
right,
and they're irate, but they want us to be. So, and we do it, and we do it very well. I think we're doing it better now. So I think Massachusetts has been the front runners and leaders on this type of policing for a very long time. And I think the narrative that's happened after George Floyd's death has classified all of us in one bucket, in one category of policing. Certainly not true. Excuse me. So I think we do it better in Massachusetts. We've implemented all the 21st century policing long before it was issued by the president. Ferguson didn't issue those policies and didn't implement those policies, and other agencies didn't do that. And when certainly some of these areas were still finding people, and the money for the citation was going back to the police department. That's always a recipe for disaster. So I think the officers know. I hope they know. I hope they feel that we support them. The administration supports them. And when they do a great job, we're going to get up there and call them heroes, like they deserve to be called. And but that's not saying that when they mess up, we're not going to step in and correct them, because we certainly are. That's our job.
Every officer screws up at least twice in their career. They stumble, as I said, in their career, in a 20-year career. Every officer stumbles twice. I've found that to be true. It could be right at the beginning of your career, which is almost expected, and halfway through or toward the end, they might stumble again. So cops aren't perfect. What we did, what I did, what you do is a very unique position that people take it for granted. They take it for granted.
Well, we're human beings, and we make mistakes.
Yeah,
that's right.
When adrenaline's rushing through your body, some things you don't see. You have some tunnel vision, and you have to train to break that television. You have to train younger officers more to break that television and make sure they see everything while they're responding and while they're in the middle of an incident.
So you don't have any recruitment problems? Is it kind of?
You have a retention problem, I like to call it.
Okay.
Is not so much my problem, but as I said at the beginning of the show, I lost 4 people to the state police that were great cops.
Right.
And we trained them. They work for us, and they go, and then they go off to the state police. So we certainly do have a retention problem. We can't compete with the state police with salaries. We can't compete with a lot of people for salaries like the North Readings and the Readings. Everett's paying much more now than the casinos in Everett. So we always lose people. But I try not to focus or become consumed with losing people. I look at it as part of my job. That if I created a good police officer, another agency wants, so I did my job well.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And I think, on the other hand, I show my appreciation by not holding my officers back. Some people don't allow transfers. What am I going to keep someone here and have them become miserable and non-productive police officer? No, we can't do that too. But I think it speaks volumes for them that someone else wants them. I think it speaks volumes to the department for actually bringing them along to a point where someone else wants them. And I think we have to let them go if they're doing it for the best interest of their family.
Yeah. We got this question from Hannah Belcher again. Can you talk a little about the Winthrop Clear program? Any plans to expand that? Yeah,
so the CLEAR program, as I mentioned, my lieutenant is over the public health department with Meredith and Jane Rupp, one of our social workers, and we brought on Bob Rapucci, who was for 40 years at Capic in Chelsea. to become a program coordinator and making sure that we cover all our bases. And we're adding actual social workers. We just got a very large grant from the Department of Public Health. I think it was $549,000 to expand some of that department, and also do some training in the police department on implicit bias and stuff like that. So it's a great program. We are including a firefighter now in that program and bringing a firefighter into it. So you have a police officer and a firefighter helping with the opiates and homelessness. We do have, not as bad as probably what they have in Florida or San Francisco or Boston, Melina Cass in Boston, but we do get the homeless people pushed into Winthrop during the winter months, and we want to make sure that they're certainly handled appropriately, given appropriate resources and shelters. So I think I think the CLEAR program is clearly something I'm very proud of. I can't even take the credit. I have a young officer walked in my office and said, "Can I try this?" And I said to him, "Go ahead. You want to run your head against that brick wall? Let me know when it doesn't work, and we'll talk about it." And he came back to me. He goes, "People are saying yes to me. I'm in uniform, knocking on the door, saying, 'Do you need help?' And they're saying yes to me." So it just goes to prove that we all don't shoot down the ideas we don't agree with, because good things can come from those ideas, and allow officers a little freedom to explore, and you'll reap the benefits later on from it. And
absolutely,
reap those benefits.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point, and a nice dovetail here, Terry, because Monday we're going to have actually Meredith Hurley on, and Scott's hearing about this for the first time because I hadn't had a chance to talk to him about it yet. But we're going to have Meredith Hurley on to talk about developing awareness training. I found an ad. I think I shared it privately with the two of you. That caused a little bit of concern for me. But let's not shoot down the idea. To your point, Terry, let's not shoot down the idea until we learn more about it.
Exactly.
And I'm going on their Zoom tomorrow night to learn more about it myself, Todd.
Yeah.
And certainly, I hear your concerns. And I know you emailed me and I didn't get back to you on that.
That's okay. Nope, that's okay.
But I think, it comes from grant funding. It comes as a result of the incident of June 26th.
Yep.
And it shows our commitment to have full discussions with a cross population of people about hate. And do we have a hate problem? We have several incidences that are surrounded by hateful comments or hateful things people are doing to a specific race or someone's nationality that has been involved. So I think it's time for us to talk and have an open discussion about it. We don't have to agree on it, but at least get the conversation going. I think it's the important message, and I think it was well intended. I had some concerns with the message, and Meredith's working with that company.
Yeah. That was the big thing for me, and Scott and I will talk more about this with Meredith next week. But the big thing was the messaging, how it came across, reading the bios of some of the people behind this. But in talking to Meredith, just so everybody's clear here, in talking to Meredith, I believe the intent is good. I understand the intent isn't, hey, white people, you're dumb, and you need to be spoken to like children. Although some people are doing that on this Winthrop Votes group page. You're seeing some people coming on here and talking to us like we're 6-year-olds. But the long and the short of it is,
that's Facebook junk.
Yeah, true.
It's
what
Facebook
we need
junk.
to do is this conversation is important, and I'm hoping to have more of them here on the show too, because I think our community can benefit from a couple of things. One, how federal politics and the lies around it are affecting the relationships here locally.
Yeah, I think our plan was to have a local response to a local incident. And that was our plan, and that was our intention, and not to have it come from a national resource, a national source, or national pressure. It's certainly something that we worked hard with throughout the summer. Something we worked hard with the ADL, the congregation at the temple, and other minority community members. And we want everyone to feel comfortable in Winthrop. We want them to be able to feel free to walk the streets and safely do so.
But that's I think that's
everything, right?
Yeah, but I think that's an unachievable goal because every city, every town, every municipality in the country has these people in it. No town is pure. No city is pure. I think when people walk the streets in Mayberry, there's a chance somebody's going to yell at them. They'll say something to them.
Sure.
I just think it's part of life, and these people
I don't
take
disagree, but certainly when you have the June 26th incident,
But isn't that an anomaly? It's an unfortunate. Now, I am not downplaying this by any means, way, shape, or form. I am not downplaying this. But that was in Winthrop, in particular, that was an anomaly.
Right, back to your point, Scott.
Yeah.
Used to be an anomaly to a place like Winthrop. Unheard of.
Right.
Back to your point.
But it happened, right? So
is that these people are everywhere now.
Yeah.
They're no longer, the philosophies are no longer about attacking big cities. They
Right.
can do more harm, more damage in smaller communities. And given the conversation going, maybe someone calls us and says, you know what, this person's acting a little odd lately. And then we can send out our mental health team and our CLEAR team and maybe intervene a little bit earlier. I wish someone spoke up. I wish someone said, he saw his writings.
I agree with that, Terry. But I also wish we would stop. Listen, people are going to say shit. So, sorry. People are going to say stuff that's stupid. They're going to say ignorant things. But when we shun them and when we publicly shame them and when we cancel them and when we do all these things to them, whether we think they deserve it or not is not relevant. They immediately have that opposition reflex. They hide, and then we don't know who they are anymore. And I don't know about you, Terry, but I'm thinking as a law enforcement officer, you want to know who all the bad guys are and where they live.
Well, my thing is not to worry so much about what people say. I worry about their actions, right? And their mindset, and could that potentially lead to a crime? So we only punish people for criminal acts. And not for the spoken words, because they're protected under the First Amendment.
No, that's right. We're not talking about law enforcement, but go ahead.
And we've had the incidences where we've researched it and certainly gone to the DA's office with it and said, this is our finding. We don't find any crime, and had them look at it as an independent source, and they agreed with us. So, we do our due diligence to keep Winthrop people safe, all of Winthrop people safe. And when we're in doubt, we have someone else come in and look at it and making sure we're doing the right thing. And I think that's the best I can do. That's makes me, allows me to go home and put my head on the pillow and rest nicely at night.
Is Winthrop a well-equipped police department?
We are.
Technology-wise?
Yeah. A lot of our equipment comes from the UASI Urban Area Security Initiative that we belong to, that because we're so close to Boston. We're one of the 9 communities that actually get funding from the federal government.
We got a phone call. Stand by. You're on Winthrop Votes Live.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you? Who's this?
Oh, I'm good. No, this is Kathleen Capuccio.
Hi, Kathleen.
How are you? Terry, and as other people were saying, thank you for everything you do. Literally volunteering pretty much for this job. You're amazing. And have always had the utmost respect for you and always will. One thing though, I'd like a little more clarification on is when we're discussing, hate crimes and, what's happening in Winthrop, I'd like to know actually what the rates are and what the incidents are. What happened to those 2 beautiful people was horrific and disgusting, and, frankly, may he burn in hell. However, I'm not seeing this as some prolific problem in Winthrop unless it's not being reported. So can you maybe, espouse a little bit as to, how many of these incidents are happening? Because at least what's reported in the town, this was actually an anomaly. This was not something, and again, this was not a man that was born, raised, grew up here. So I'm just wondering, can we put some real factual context to how
Yes, I can.
hateful this town supposedly is?
Yeah, well, I didn't say this town is hateful, and I don't want my
Oh
words
that was me saying that
no,
based on.
I just want to be very clear. There's hate incidences that we've had, and there's hate crimes we've had. So a hate incident does not get reported like a hate crime does. So a hate crime is something that you would have seen on June 26th, and that's multiple hate crimes in one day. So it depends how you count the statistics. A year before that, we had a hate incident. I think it might have been 9 months before that, a hate incident in which we did not classify as a crime. We have other hate incidences that take place that are juveniles, are within juvenile classifications that. So we work with the schools and we work with our restorative justice programs to address those. So but is one acceptable?
No, it's not.
Right? It's a good reason to have a conversation. It's a good reason to have a conversation to make sure that we address that the community needs. I think that's the main point.
Right.
Again, we're one of the agencies that have been complimented by the Attorney General's office to report our hate incidences. We've had them back in 2012, 2014. We've had isolated hate incidences that have been classified. I remember taking a family from one of their homes to school every day and the police escort because of a hate incident. So these are just off the top of my head. And that was some time ago. So,
Sorry.
We probably have one or two crimes every 3 or 4 years.
So
you have these incidences in between where someone might say something that's not appropriate to be saying.
No, especially. So Todd, may I clarify something?
Sure.
Or no?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the fact is, when we're talking about something that the chief just said, there might be a reportable incident every 3 or 4 years. What, in my opinion, and what is actually factual and what's being put out is, I'll be frank, I'm tired of some people, and I don't mean you, Terry. We are not some hateful town. So to say an incident happens, and I don't mean the disgusting murder of those two beautiful people, and that is disgusting and terrible. But for anyone to paint, the town as some racist town without actually factual data, and for you, as you just said, 3 to 4 years something might go on, I just think it's terrible.
Well, and what you're saying is there's an element in Winthrop, and again, it's Facebook garbage. Most of these groups, they turn into garbage. They have good intention, and there's certain people that are now becoming pretty well known that want to push like Winthrop's too white. It's not diversified enough. It's not, and the people in Winthrop that live there, that have lived there, I can understand are defensive, and it creates this, like what the caller is saying, it creates a divide. Like, don't tell us Winthrop has a race problem. It's had a couple of unfortunate incidents, but it seems to be a small group that wants to create something that's not there. And I think this is why you get people defensive of Winthrop.
I just think it's important that, we're all talking from our perspectives, right?
Yes.
That's right.
And we don't know how people of different colors, races, origins feel about Winthrop. And, I said what I said, and I'll go back and look it up and find exactly what our statistics are tomorrow, and have one of my detectives punch those out for me. But again, I think it's, everyone's perception should count. And I think it's a good way to have a conversation. Certainly, someone told me they wouldn't come to my implicit bias training that I invited because he just didn't trust the process. That person was a person of color and just didn't feel comfortable in the room. And I see this gentleman all the time, and we talk all the time. I respect his opinion. He had a different perception than I did, but I have to respect that too. So I think it's, this is a springboard to get the conversation going, so everyone understands how everyone feels. I think that's positive. I think that's constructive.
Terry, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off
No,
because
please
this
go
is. I think you're absolutely right. However, I think we need to take it a step back because I went to one of the first implicit buying trainings at the library, implicit training bias trainings at the library, and one of the things they were showing was how the news media is implicitly biased. And I'm not going to get into details of how they were all wrong, but they were all wrong because I studied this stuff in college, and it was just being totally bent the wrong way. The point being, you're right. These conversations need to happen, but I think we need to have a broader conversation first. I think the conversation needs to be, hey, look, you're black, you're white, you're brown, you're Native American, you're African American, you're an Indian, you're a Cherokee, you're whatever you are. Let you decide. We all are different, right? I'm an old, crusty white guy that uses language from the 70s that isn't acceptable today. I've been speaking this way for however many years. You young buck coming up to me and calling me out in front of everybody, that's not helping anybody, right? So I think we need to all understand that we're coming from a place of good and that we want to understand everything first because it has become fashion to bash middle-aged white men. That is a fact. So that's where I think this is all coming from.
Yeah, again, we all have our different perspectives
Yeah.
on this issue, and I respect your perspective as well as I respect everyone else's in the town. But I think it's important to get out there and start talking about it so we can move forward. I think that's the important thing. How do we move forward from this major incident that we've had? And we have to have a plan to do that.
And we'll get back to this. I just want to bring up this one more thing. Wendy Millar-Page, friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Talk to our folks of color. Like, all of them have a problem in Winthrop. That's the problem. That comment right there is the problem. Hold on. You're on Winthrop Votes Live.
Wendy Millar-Page,
Friend of the show.
There you go. Busted.
Okay.
Listen, I have a different take, and most of you know that I grew up and till a certain age and then left and came back, right? Winthrop to me is a loving, generous, very circle our wagons, take care of each other when everything, if anything hits the fan, people are there for each other. There's no doubt in that. And that was true after the murders on June 26th. However, when you have dialogues like the training, I went to the first night. That's part why I'm calling in. I went to the first evening of the event that's being sponsored. So first, that company worked with our people of color here in Winthrop, and they had just the folks who were BIPOC participate. Now they're having
what's BIPOC, Wendy? Wendy, what's BIPOC?
BIPOC, Black
it's liberal talk for. It's liberal talk for what?
Black people
of color.
Black Indigenous people of color.
Black Indigenous people of color.
Black people.
It's not just black people, but it's all.
It is.
It goes beyond that.
Okay.
All right,
not really.
Let's not do our liberal lefty righty thing. Let's just.
I'm just stating a fact. It's just a made up name.
Okay. So beyond that, our people of color in Winthrop had the opportunity to meet together and talk and see how they feel, right? Now the same group is doing the same work with white folks in Winthrop so that they have an opportunity to have open dialogue like we're trying to have here, where Todd and I are not going to agree on maybe a particular way of speaking about something, but why it might be offensive to somebody else. And how do we help each other learn to not offend?
Why are we separating? Why are we separating in groups though in the first place? These people are, hold on, let me just frame it for you a little bit. If people are willing to participate in this conversation, why are we breaking out BIPOC, white, black, brown? Come together, everybody.
I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. Okay. From a psychological perspective, when you have groups of people who are like skin tone, able to freely speak without fear of anyone else, hearing or getting offended, having the opportunity to have an open dialogue with people who look just like you, it changes the dynamic in the conversation. After you have the groups that are separate, then you can bring everybody together and say, without having to name names or point specific fingers to a person, this one said, this one, this is when you bring it back together, and then we have the conversations together. And I know it sounds a little strange, but
Well-
it does work, and it's proven to work in multiple scenarios from corporate America, schools, and in really, really rough racially non-racially diverse communities.
Wendy, can we?
So I would like you guys to give it a chance.
Well,
is all I'm saying.
actually, I'm inviting you to call in next Monday night because that's a more appropriate guest to address this. Of course, Wendy, you know we always appreciate your input. You are a true friend of the show. And for the record, from this point on, I want to be referred to as YPOC. So
Yeah, YPOC.
I can do that for you if that's how you'd like to identify as. I can do that. However
Next
you
week
choose
we'll
to
have-
identify, I'll honor it.
Next
Thank you,
week we'll have
Wendy.
a
I
new
appreciate
name.
that.
And
All
a
right.
new name
Alrighty,
after that.
And please let Chief intro. He's doing a wonderful job. I'm very proud to be, as I state, I'm calling as Wendy, not Town of Winthrop Wendy, but I do appreciate his leadership and his leadership style, and I hope we find somebody that can fill those giant shoes.
Yes. Thank you for calling, Wendy, as usual.
Thank you. Wendy.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. I have one more question for you, and then there's a comment that I want to read to everybody that might not have seen it. What happened to the blue flags that were going on the fire department trucks?
Sure, that's a great comment. That's something that I did not have a decision in, but certainly understood exactly where the town manager was coming from. He was requested to hang a Black Lives Matter flag. He said no, the only flag that should hang on town property is that of the United States or the state flag. And that was his stance, that was his policy. As a result of that, he asked for all flags to be removed except the United States flag or the state flag. We had special exemption from that for officers that had died, not in the line of duty, but as police officers when they had cancer. And we had a decal on the cruisers with his number on it, and my brother Michael's had a decal for my brother Michael, who died while he was working as a police officer, not in the line of duty. His number as well, and we certainly got exemptions because they weren't flags. They were decals, and those were permitted to stay on. So I think when you have a strong policy, you have to enforce that policy, and you have to. I think Austin Faison, the former town manager, made the right decision by saying we're not going to open this can of worms. We're going to close it off, and this is what we're going to do.
So they couldn't put them on the back of the fire engines or anything like that?
That's correct.
So then
all town property.
So the town council president, Phil Boncory, then just went rogue and flew the pride flag over the town green, I believe it was last June, against policy, right? Or what was in place, kind of. Well, if you followed it for
had no written policy, but Austin Faison verbally said that was his policy. And so I took over for Austin, and the flag was flown on the town green. And certainly I was out there, so I will take credit and blame for my decisions. Depending on how you feel about it, I get credit and I get blame. But we had to make a decision, and that's the decision we made. I think we did the right thing by referring this for ordinance review and have clear policy put in place. We're still waiting for that policy to be finalized to make sure that that we were in compliance with the U.S. Constitution requirements, state law, federal law. There was a Boston case in federal court, so we want to make sure that we remain in compliance with all those.
And because of that, and I always say this, and you were talking about something relative to this earlier, where I say out of everything bad comes something good, right? And out of that whole flag issue came the Winthrop Votes live stream.
That's right.
There you go.
That was the catalyst of the whole thing. So I know you're pressed for time. We went over an hour, but I want this comment. My good friend Steve Stevens, or Stephen Paolini, I'll say his name, I don't care, and fellow Igno from back in the day, he said this earlier, but I wanted to finish it with a bang. He said, in my opinion, and as well as others I am friends with in Winthrop, and I got a lot of them, Chief Terry D is absolutely the best police chief we have ever had, and he's a lifelong resident. I may not, and he's been chased by the police with me, so I may not agree with all of his positions, but I can tell he's coming from an excellent police perspective with resident consideration. All of the police officers in Winthrop that I talk to have the utmost respect for him, and his officers treat him and the residents with respect. This can only get better. So there you go.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. It means a lot when you know you're affecting people in a positive manner.
Yes. And with that, we're going to cut you loose because I'm sure
Thank you.
You want to go home. You got caught up in some conversation you probably shouldn't have been in, but I appreciate you sticking around and dealing with it.
It was town manager stuff, right? He's the acting town manager, I guess.
I guess, okay. It was crossover.
Okay, hey, listen, we're willing to answer the tough questions. Since job's not easy and the questions get tough every day. So I'm glad we've had the discussion. I'm glad you're open to having open dialogue on some of the issues that I know you don't agree with. And so I think it's important. Thank you both.
Yeah,
All right, Terry.
And thank you, Terry. We hope you'll join us next Monday, and at least watching. With the Hurley, if you have time, with the Meredith Hurley conversation.
Sounds good.
You're
And
right.
maybe we'll have you on like every couple months or something. We can get a little update on what's going on.
Yeah.
With the town, I think the people would like it. This seems to be the best forum because the transcript certainly doesn't give any information to people.
No,
that's my little shot at them.
No, Steven,
but anyways,
come on, Steven.
I'm gonna leave at that. Thank you, Paul. Have a good night.
We'll see
all
you
right,
later,
thanks, Terry. Thanks, buddy. All right, so there you go. Good show.
There you have it, right? Winter politics starting at the local level. This wasn't political, but he is a figure in town that matters and has influence politically.
I think it was a very informative show.
It was.
So.
And I hope people got a lot out of it. Share the heck out of it. I heard the saying tonight at the bridge before I came here to the show, Scott. We were standing out, and there was a lot of talk about all politics is local. We've got to start paying more attention locally. So,
and that's what we're here for, buddy.
It's working.
That's what we're here for. So everybody vote tomorrow.
Yep.
Per order of Wendy Millar Page, friend of the show.
Yes.
No, but everyone should get out and vote tomorrow. Very important.
Yep. And if you have questions, feel free to PM us. I'll answer them. PM
Jim Lettieri. Anyways, Jim Lettieri.
It's no secret.
I can't vote, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I can.
All right, so give us a rundown next Monday night, and we'll let everybody go.
Yeah, so next Monday night, 8 o'clock, we're going to have Hannah. Excuse me. Sorry. Meredith
Hannah's
Hurley
on your brain right now.
Yeah,
huh?
she just popped across the screen. Meredith Hurley who is she works she's director of health in Winthrop, and she is trying to help kick off we saw some literature going around about educating white people, and there was some negative reaction, mostly from me, probably. But sorry, I took offense to it. We're going to get some clarity on that Monday night. It sounds like it could actually be a pretty good program. It just might need some tweaking.
All right. So with that, someone just wrote locations change, whatever. I don't get that. But all right, everybody. Well, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. If you like the show, share it. We've been killing the Facebook ratings the last couple of weeks. People are catching on, and we'd appreciate it if you passed it on to everybody else. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate your time that you give us. And as I say on my podcast, I will end this show tonight by saying, to quote my favorite artist, Morrissey, is doing the show for you. The pleasure, the privilege is mine and Todd's.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, Todd, stay on.